Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. As we were talking off air, this podcast is a long time coming and really a nice way to close the book on the off season, as we will really get our hands dirty handicapping the NFL, I believe, starting next week. So without further ado, we welcome to the deep dive for the first time, Mr. Adam Bjorn, a man who needs no introduction among the sharper players, I think, in the space, because everyone kind of has heard your background, I think. And if you haven't, there are some great listens out there if you're looking for some summertime podcast listening. But Adam, has been gracious with his time as a very, very busy man. And can't wait to ask you about all of the different hats you wear across the sports betting space, some of the experiences you've had opening up Prime Sportsbook, and just in general, your thoughts on sort of the direction of what's happening in the United States, and just generally a state of the industry from, a very, very specific perspective that you bring to the table here in the U.S. And then beyond that, just some questions about bookmaking that I've always wanted to know the answers to. So without further ado, welcome to the deep dive, Mr. Bjorn.
All right, great. Thanks for having me. I was just looking as the intro was coming in. Funny enough, today was the first time I'd listened to the Prime Suspects podcast, which we've done 30 plus episodes. But I was on a plane yesterday, so Joe had to do it on his own. So it was actually the first one that I've been in that I'd sort of listened to.
See, you got it all wrong. Those of us in the content space, we love hearing our own voices. We always listen to the stuff we do. I think that's part of the math.
Yeah, it's tough listening to yourself sometimes. I don't love doing that. I like listening to some of the other ones in the industry, definitely when I get time. It's kind of that time of year before, like you said, before football fires up. That freaked me out. I was saying that to Adam off the air. Some people had posted things like, "Oh, the Hall of Fame game is in like 30 some days." Like, Jesus.
Yeah.
What happened? It was just Easter. Things do fly by. Obviously, all the sports going, even what we consider the dead time here in American sports with the NBA and the NHL. There's still so much going on. I know you're keeping plenty busy, and yeah, it's been something we've enjoyed. We haven't done this nearly enough talking to someone who does, the back end operations, who does the, gets to see how the sausage is made. We talked to Benson a couple years ago, but other than that, it's been a lot of the other side of the counter for the most part. And yeah, if you maybe, we didn't want to spend a ton of time on this, but maybe just give people who don't know what's going on the elevator pitch on, Prime and what you're doing there.
So sort of Prime Sports is what I've sort of called bringing the offshore home, regulating the unregulated. Again, my background has been in sort of offshore US. Even spent time in India 20 plus years ago, Vanuatu, which was Australia's offshore, and things like that. So, and it's always kind of interesting because, what are offshore books to you guys are just regular sports books to me, because I'm offshore. Like, I'm not, when I'm in the US, I try and play with books that I can have access to, which is difficult, having no social security numbers and things like that. But when I'm outside the US, I mean, they're just sports books. They're just more places to bet with. So there's really the gray, the black, the white, whatever it is. I've never really kind of lived in that space because I've lived in countries where it's all seen as white. It's accessible outs kind of thing. So it's sort of an interesting course, and Prime ultimately is, again, I'd spent 30 or 40 years betting, 30 years bookmaking, and now building that technology for the last 5 or 6, trying to blend those two worlds together. In the software space has always been developed by people that have never placed a bet, never taken a bet. And then it was kind of seeing the US open up, and how do you get in there? And as we can see, it was a mad rush for so many, and there's just carcasses all along the highway. So it's really been, while the New Jersey conversation with Prime started 5 years ago, and the development and the compliance and the certifications and that, it was kind of, there's no need to rush. This is not going anywhere. It's, first waves, second waves a long way away. So just take the time, do it slowly. Don't blow your load too quickly, and then just pace yourself, which is really with a small bankroll compared to, a massive brick and mortar casino brand or a FanDuel or a DraftKings or any of those ones.
Okay, so you guys are, if you build it, they will come for the players that want a real stake who have a pulse. Is that kind of fair?
So that was the theory. We've gotten a few punches in the nose, in my opinion, in like they're not coming as quickly as suspected. That's really of sort of, diving into the culture a little bit of they want the answers. They're not willing to do the work. Like, again, 99% of the players, they just want to see one line tout versus, watching a 30-minute show of what they should be looking for, different analysis, things like that. I mean, 30 years, you can read a whole lot of, 3-page documents saying lots of information at the bottom. They have a pick and you go, let me read that again, because that pick doesn't match the, theory behind it. And yet people are just looking at that one line at the bottom and jumping into that. So it's been very slow. The arbitrages are the ones that have been doing all the work, which there's not another sportsbook in the US that I don't mind being on the other side of an arbitrage. So that's kind of the way we've developed it early on, is find the niches, find the holes, and which has kind of led to a very hectic summer with a lot of these kind of sports, soccer, cricket, the golf, tennis major, and seeing what those, what the taste for those are.
That's an interesting thing, thinking about some of the, outside of the big four sports in America, because you're an American sportsbook now.
Right.
And just it leads me to an email I got this afternoon regarding one of the major operators and how they're wanting to handle the Olympics and how they're going with their affiliates, and what's in this, it's the same kind of emails we get around January, like, hey, you can't say Super Bowl, you can't do this, you can't do that, and don't use these, don't make your own stuff. And what's happening with that? Are you guys going to be able to book that? Is there any regulation? And is that something that's just state by state, like everything else, where
like
Iowa
everything
can't
else.
do college props, and
Yep.
Pennsylvania can't do this, and New York can't do the Heisman, and it's that part drives me up a wall.
Yeah, so that's learning this. I mean, I'm glad we're only in 2 states right now, third coming, maybe a fourth before the end of the year. New Jersey, obviously been around a while, have a fairly extensive catalog. Actually, a lot of rules in that were passed for the last Olympics, and their catalog have sort of been created off that. Whereas a lot of the other states weren't open last Olympics, so they have no experience in that spot. And then you look at an Ohio, which really says you can offer anything that doesn't have judging. So no, there's no gymnastics, there's no diving, I guess the break dancing is probably out as well. Skateboarding, there's things like that. So now on a technology aspect, for BetCris Latin America, which is our prime client, it's everything can be opened, but the traders have to make sure that only X things are getting sent into Ohio and other things are getting sent into New Jersey. And honestly, the Olympics, it's a punters, bettors, for American terms, feast every 4 years. There's no bookmaker winning on the Olympics. There's just savages, like I've done for many before this, of just cleaning out the bookmakers as much as possible every 4 years. I remember the first time I got to Jamaica, and I was in Australia for Sydney for 2000, and then went to Jamaica pretty much afterwards. So I started to look at reports and digging into old bets and, gold medal totals and things like this. And I was like, these numbers were so far off what I was betting into. Like, why didn't I know about this part of the world before Sydney? Because I'd obviously done a lot of work leading into that. Was 5-6 years into sort of my bookmaking betting career of 100-hour weeks every week. And then obviously 2004, I remember literally going home for 30 minutes a day to bathe and sleeping under the desk and just, love Olympics from a bookmaker's standpoint. But as a bettor, none of these places, including our own, have any idea really how to put this together and how to do it. And if you don't have any real liquidity to be able to move numbers around and be aggressive knowing that you know nothing, again, they're just going to get eaten alive.
Well, if you just opt for 10K pops on a market that has a favorite that should be minus 800 and you're like, I don't know, 200, you're like, oh, that gets shaped real quick.
Well, not only that, but like the amount of pass posts that there's been in Olympic sports over the years. But and this isn't truly a pass post, but when they leave markets up for sports like running or swimming where there's prelims, and they leave up the outrights for, whatever track or swimming event, and they get through the prelims and something happens that drastically should change the odds, and they just don't do anything for a few hours. And
the favorite.
I feel like that's where there's been a lot of probably them taking it in the shorts.
The other aspect of it as well is, and this is where data is just a failure. You can look at the times that they ran in heats and stuff like that. This is where the eye test and watching all this stuff is the key. And then where they really do fail, kind of an extension of what you just said, Andy, it was you've got your runners in the 100 and the 200 are generally the same. So you get to see who's in form in the 100, and they've just left the 200 up like, oh, well, that's events in a few days. It has nothing to do with the heats and that in the 100. And you can see who's running into form. And this is swimming is a big one where they fail, is in a sense of, generally you have the 50, the 100, the 200s is pretty much the same swimmer runs through these events or does really well. And you get someone coming into that first one, especially the heats, and then you hear all the information about their background and what they did in the European Championships or Pacific Championships, in the trials and all these kind of things. Even spending this weekend watching the US trials and sort of knowing some of those runners from the diamond leagues and things like that. Like it's a culmination that there's no one doing any work on this, and someone's going to put up a market like a Bet Radar or a Bet Genius. Everyone's going to copy, and then people are just going to pounce on it and just eat the books alive.
No, they can fix it. They fix it. All right. So this is a perfect segue. This is a perfect segue because having talked to you at the Derby in particular, like I know you have a passion for originating. For sure. Like how much of your just general, role responsibility do you still get to just originate markets? Do you just focus on what you especially like? Do you focus on where you feel like you can make a biggest impact for your company? What is your, how do you kind of wear all of the different hats of, we're starting a sportsbook in the US and I'm now building a tech company. And by the way, I'm originating, swimming markets for the Olympics every 4 years. What are the different hats and how do you kind of, split your time appropriately?
So I was always about originating, always wanted to have the first number up, wanted to be, out there, whatnot. Originating is not for the faint-hearted, and originating is really not even what you need to do these days.
Sure.
It's almost better off not being the originator in a sense of let someone else go up, then go and sort of wait for a few more. When the liquidity is there, go do your betting and pound the number into place and then put yours up for the others to come in once the market's settled. Obviously, again, the horse racing, the Kentucky Derby and specifically is I'm originating a lot of stuff. The matchups, I'm generally the first one out. And it's just like, I have 2 or 3 people that I give them a quick call, set it up, and then they just hammer those numbers into place. Because again, generally I've worked at places where the liquidity's been there and it's been built up. Obviously with Prime, again, liquidity is small. They sort of, don't have the player base as right now to sort of build up and be the originators in certain spots. There's no real value there. So it's more of being in a market that isn't ultra competitive, doesn't have big limits, doesn't let everybody play. So let the market go up and then, follow into place or manipulate it where you want to be. Right now, majority of Prime's New Jersey volume is golf. And that's because originating, holding our numbers, We've got SIG over at Sport Trade putting their numbers up, and we're just letting the ARBs sit there, and people are just getting a freebie and beating them into place of, and it's sort of who's going to blink first. Based on the results so far, Sport Trade won the Masters. I think we won all the events in the middle, and then Sport Trade won this past weekend. So, it's kind of even a little bit our way from those things. But that's kind of like, how do we tackle this without spending $100 million a month? Finding little niches, doing little things like that.
Okay.
When you talk about the time, I mean, just the time calculus on, how many things you can do in a day.
Yeah.
And not only that, but then you got to start talking about the live markets, and then that's a bill too. As far as, are you going to build the tech, or are you going to?
Let's put a pin in the live
tech?
Markets for later.
Yeah.
I got to follow up with a specific question about the New Jersey. Right, at some point there's a calculus you have to do of like, man, I'd really like to watch track trials because I know, or I'd really like to watch this cricket match because I'm into this, and I'd like to bet it. But we've now lost 3 in a row to SIG and with the ARBs. I'm going to put some time into figuring out what's at the nucleus of their model that we're not capturing, so that we can know when and where to crush them, right? Like right. There's got to be some calculus of I need to solve their problem first, and then it's all one-way traffic, right?
Somewhat, but it's gotten to the point where if you've got the liquidity, the number doesn't matter. You can put up a bad number. Like I could put up, week 2 NFL now, have certain limits. The only people that are betting right now is someone that hears quarterback's broken his leg, or certain things like that. So originating those, the week 1s that come out a month ago or something like that, for the time you have to put in it, for the money you're going to get, things like that. Again, the golfers, we're pretty confident in what we have, kind of know what's out there. If we can get the liquidity and we go back and forth each week, so be it, kind of thing. The Olympics, again, really want to put a lot of time into it, more from the betting side of the aspect. And then by, ultimately that's kind of, I've put in my time as a bettor, and then that just translates into the bookmaking side. There's a lot of bookmakers that lose their ass betting. There's a lot of bettors that try to bookmake and just struggle when you've got to price up every game versus pricing up a couple of games and picking out which ones you want. So that's sort of the challenge as well, is once you have liquidity, the number doesn't matter because it'll get to where it needs to pretty quickly. Once you've got, and this is why it's, welcoming everybody into the book, the information is the better and the bets. And then you can have, $2 limits, $2,000 limits, and you can quickly go to 10 once you've seen the right people bet. And then if you get 2 guys that you respect on either side, they don't know they're on either side, but suddenly that limit can be 20 and they're hitting out each way, and you're just taking your 5, 10, 12 cents or whatever else in the middle. So it's sort of every situation's different, and you've got to just, weigh that up. But yeah, I mean, this last month we plugged in this, our cricket model for the World Cup, which I'd been pushing for a while, and we were offering 1.5% markets. Sometimes we got it literally down to like 0.1, 0.2%, where we're offering like penny markets up around like 150, 160. But it was just like, let it fly. And we had even traders going, well, don't we want to put some margin in this? And this is insane. And no, just let it fly, big limits. Let's see who comes. It didn't drive the traffic that one would hope, but it was what we wanted from it. And it was a market now that, cricket's going to be at the Olympics in 2028. We can see that culture. I mean, the best thing that happened was the US doing as well as they did. So now that's sort of capturing the imagination of a few more people than what there was before. And then there is this huge sort of subcontinent culture within the US, particularly in New Jersey as well, from what I understand. So it's kind of now working out, where to go from here with some of these sports, because my competitors aren't DraftKings and FanDuel.
True.
They're unregulated markets. It's the guy at the corner bar. And this is where you sort of get into challenges of crypto credit and trying to be able to push into those avenues with speaking to regulators. And you're trying to change a landscape. And I'm learning more and more that it's not an easy landscape to change if they really want to compete with the market that's, been their market for decades.
And you talk about that with the the upcoming. There's more cricket coming up, and you said there is some appetite for that. Is that something that I don't know you thought at the beginning that you would do, or something that you've seen throughout your career, or that you maybe believe now is that you should lean into the liquidity? Like, hey, we have a shitload of people wanting to bet golf with us, wanting to bet into our lines because they have access to because they have access to sport trade, and they're going back and forth. Or, we're in the right markets for that. And it just says, well, we should be able to lean into that. We should be offering more things to just get more liquidity. Because I love what you said. You've probably taken some really bad bets.
Oh yeah.
For you, and you can, because you can have a horseshit position on an early number, just take an absolute bath on an early number, but with low limits and just the amount of people betting into it later in the market, it just won't matter anymore. So I mean, is that something you're looking at as far as like,
always.
Hey, here was our roadmap, but now knowing what we know now and what people are betting into, where the big liquidity is, we've veered this way.
Yeah, so I mean, we've sort of seen with what happened in New Jersey with that VIP player that was at DK and went over to Fanatics for the month. There's another sports book in Arizona that when you would look at the numbers on a monthly basis, you're going, this little tiny casino's doing what? They're like 4th out of 20, and then find out that it's sort of one player that's doing that. And that's the world's kind of creator. Bet365 was one player, supposedly lost a couple of $100 million, and that's what created Bet365. So it's really just not worrying about all the other operators and things like that. It's trying to see, with the regulators, tell me the rules of the game, and then I'll play within those, and then sort of, have conversations. And credit to the US regulators. They have been the ones I've dealt with, happy to have conversations, understand what we're trying to do. Growth over enforcement is the way to go, and trying to build something that ultimately, can just chip away at the niche and things like that. So it's just,
I don't know if you'll lost that much.
Looking for those certain things, knowing that it's the off season. Prime's done zero marketing.
Sure.
But we've got cricket up at 1%. We've got soccer up, 2 big tournaments. And this is the one thing that I can, absolutely lean into. I know Circa come out. Benson might have said, some years ago or at some point, like, we don't write much better bets or much money on soccer. I can guarantee you Americans bet soccer. Huge numbers are bet on soccer, maybe not in the regulated market, but around the globe. So it's something that definitely, and whenever I've been on these sort of things, it's sort of, 2026 is 64 Super Bowls in 40 days. It's like, that's my target. So if we can get, 5 to 8 states, have some good states with good borders, obviously looking at tax rates and all those kind of things, which is right now a huge challenge. And it's just leaning into those things and, not worrying about what everyone else is doing. Sure, cash outs is coming, same game parlays we're looking into. But generally they're, the next step to iGaming when they're just raping and pillaging the players. And that's, while I've changed my mindset a little bit on how this business should be run and how to do it.
Sure.
It's still, I'm not looking at 20 to 30-year-olds. I'm looking at 40 plus, 60 plus retired, ones that have bank that are looking to play. And when you see all the stats coming out of this market, again, DraftKings, FanDuel, Fanatics, they have high 20 to 30s. And you see these stats and these charts and you go, well, there's a whole untapped market because the 50 plus they say is like 1 or 2% of the market. Well, I sure as hell know that that's not the case.
Yeah,
So,
those guys are they're betting at the
Yeah, I know.
American Legion with their
I
guy.
go even stronger than that. The numbers and those customers, there will be churn, right? Like those people won't have the money to keep playing when they decide to go have families. And the ones that are smart enough, they're going to kick them out and they're going to need to go to a place to come play. Like the ones that actually do kind of thrive ultimately. But no, that all makes sense. So, no VIP concierge service coming anytime soon from Prime.
Oh, hell yeah! So if I find a guy under a rock,
if you get the way, if you get the you get the right well,
somebody playing soccer and doing poorly.
I will do.
Those come with their own
to
headaches, though, as we're learning. But
yeah. It's been quite the week on gambling Twitter for sure. And people, there are. I wonder what the soccer numbers have looked like over the course. There's always going to be surprises. Obviously, the people that are betting table tennis in Colorado still just the numbers there just something. But
everyone that I know that
people are definitely betting soccer for sure, and that's going to continue to ramp up.
We've known guys that have 100 accounts that are dealing in the black market, and they all say the same thing. That soccer is massive and everyone loses in the US. It is literally a killing field for a lot of the black market bookmakers from what I've always heard. And so I'm sure as you kind of, find a home for those and, folks in the US, it'll show up, I'm sure.
The other aspect is the American market is the most uneducated gambling market in the world. Every bookmaker, and that's why so many of them come running so quickly, because a lot of them had gotten taste pre-2007 before they were all kicked out at that point. But anybody in the gaming world, especially in sports betting, want to be in the American market because on average, and again, I get into lots of arguments with this, the average American sports bettor is a guaranteed loser. And, it's the market that you want to be into. Now, obviously, that's changed the dynamic a little bit over recent years. You've got a lot more people being educated in it, doing the arbing, and it's sort of become not as frowned upon. But again, your average bettor, and there's a hell of a lot of yous over there, is not going to win. So it's like tapping into that market and then working out how to do it. And it's tough unless you're just giving away bonuses, which so many are doing.
Yeah, maybe the lifetime numbers are smaller because of the just the. I mean, not that these people would know what risk of ruin even means, or it's not really ruin. It's just giving up. God, shit, I quit because this is bad. I'm just hemorrhaging money. But I don't have hard numbers on that. But I feel like I read something too. It was basically what you're saying. American bettors are less educated than European punters or Australian or wherever have you. But they also bet more per bet.
Correct.
The people over in the UK, they're fine putting a $5 on their soccer team, or everybody here, well, I got to put a couple $100. That's it's the NFL. It's Monday Night Football. I got to get down heavy.
It's the consumer culture.
It seems like the dream scenario, and it seems like the biggest hiccup. And somebody had a good thread on this. The biggest hiccup has been some of the regulation. We have some of these states that have just, hey, we're gonna have a monopoly, or we're gonna have a tax rate like this. That's my favorite. My favorite Benson tweets are just the 500th time he has to politely say, yeah, we're looking at other states, but we're probably, it's you're never going to New York. That's just
that was our first 20 customers in Ohio. I was going through trolling Benson's things of, we're looking, people say you're coming to Ohio, and you'd go there and you'd go, yes, we're coming.
Nudge him.
And then New Jersey, come to New Jersey. And, we have Joe sort of now saying that circa is prime sports of the West.
So let me ask you about who you've already got under your roof then. So you used a funny term when we were chatting. You were like, yeah, we knew we were going to get the assassins. And sure enough, that's who showed up at first. And, you're pretty clearly, obviously, when you have a number up and it's getting hit. It's, these are the arbors. But I imagine that the quality of player that you've already curated they're wearing different hats. Sometimes they're arbing, sometimes they're originating, and and sometimes they've got the information in the news before it's hit the market, right? Like, can you kind of generally tell when the action is coming in from a player or an account that you're especially keen on, that whether it's which of those avenues the action is kind of derived from, or you basically just have to make your best guess based on their history?
You can get a pretty good idea. The bettor doesn't really change their MO. Originators are originators. Where they come in, and they're the ones that appreciate the most, just giving you that information for whatever price you're willing to buy it from them for. The arbors, again, you can sort of identify them pretty quickly. They'll bet $466.71 to try and get their same amount on both sides to win the same amount.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's some arbors that are just they're
just
they don't
changing
realize
their
they've been telling on them
right now.
it's like they're willing. Are they willing to round up to round numbers and take lose 0.25% just to hide it a little? But at the same time, you got to figure out eventually, like, this is where we have overlap.
Yeah, I mean, when you're arbing, and I did this for a long time, and it was more of you're just covering your risk, and you're just rolling it all on the other side. If it was between Pinnacle and somewhere else, or between Betfair and somewhere else, you were putting all the exposure on the side that you weren't betting at those places, and you were just covering what your base was there, and you were free rolling kind of thing if that's the route you wanted to go. But yeah, players don't really diverge from what they ultimately are. There's sort of you profile them as a master, non-master, pro, street, and then within that, and the street siders just give them whatever they want. You put them in a bucket and just let them go to town, and if you can, you'll multiply their limits. And then on the pro side, the master side, you can break that into 5 or 6 categories. Your bonus whores, your arbitrages, your originators, your scumbags that are just picking off latent stuff, and sort of things like that. So it's kind of just, they somewhat stay in the same realm, and it's kind of like that globally. But yeah, I mean, when you're watching the bet ticker, you can pretty much get a feel, why certain things are happening. And, you see some of those bets in that make no sense. So you go looking at, does LeBron James have a sore ankle from last night or something? Because there's, certain things happening. So the bets ultimately are the information. And that's why it, blows my mind that there's so many books out there that, kick out and limit people. But obviously they don't have the trading team as well. They're
right. If you can't read the mail, what good is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like that one, Drew.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, so
I mean, just thinking about early days of Jersey, like the first, the first books, and some of those places were farming it out, and there weren't traders at all, and they were somewhere else. It was almost like some of the live options that people farm out like that, but it was for everything. Like what are those places going to do with sharp bettors? Like I guess you're going to take volume on the wrong side.
And the one player that does get limited when they shouldn't are the bridge jumpers. So the guys that are laying 1,000, 20 to 1, laying 30 to 1, and they might win 10 or 15 bets in a row.
They won a bunch tonight in the NBA draft.
Yeah, and people just think, these guys are going to win. These guys are going to win. It's waiting for that 20-second bet when they're laying 30 and 50 to 1 that you're just waiting to collect them on. And then sort of, now they're chasing. And so then they're coming harder. They're looking for longer shots and things like that. So, that's, while it's great to have the whales and, go head to head with those things, I mean, the bridge jumpers are the most fun.
Wouldn't know anything about any of this.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. All right. So
that's a big Super Bowl. That's the fun part about the Super Bowl. It's just like looking at all those, knowing a bunch of people are like, no safety. No safety is fun.
Yeah.
It's fun until it isn't.
We had a couple in a row, right? Yeah. Okay. So
shit happens.
I got to ask, you got to help me understand a little bit. So, Is it as simple as the clientele looked ripe for the picking in the US to make the move here, as opposed to starting a crypto book or something like that? Because there's other, kind of competing models who are trying to pick off your customers and, pull them away from,
Yeah.
the legal shops right now. And or do you think that that ultimately has too many risks associated with just sort of long-term liquidity that it's not worth it?
Yeah, out of our fucking minds, we are doing this. There is no, like, you look at it now and it's like, what the hell? Like, yeah, go open a sweepstakes, like,
Yeah.
be a fliff or something like that. It's the loopholes and all that in the laws and the legislations and things like that. Like, yeah, there's a hell of a lot easier ways to make money in this game. But it was kind of, again, watching. We have all the pieces, we have all the components. On the Planetech side, we have the full stack of the technology. We know what we're doing. We have the risk management team. We have everything. For me, I know the American market, having been offshore for a period of a decade, from like 2001 to 2013 or something like that. Then, sort of got into regulated side of it, then into the compliance, and then all these other things. The cost of doing business is definitely way higher and more difficult than what was perceived.
Mm-hmm.
But like the gray market versus the white market, every dollar you write's a dollar. The theory is, in the regulated market, and the way the US, valuations of companies work is, every dollar that you win's like worth $10 or $20. So the theory is that if you do it right and you build it up and that, then you have something that's investable or saleable or roll up all the pieces and all those kind of things of that aspect. But, definitely the sweepstakes thing that's been popping along, sort of seeing that was probably a better move to have gone and done something like that in the interim.
That's boring though.
It is. Yeah, it is. I mean, that's, unfortunately, I don't like boring, and I've kind of done it in probably the most difficult ways possible. Even before this, just going to books that, taking on every player. I've never worked or consulted for anyone that's limited or kicked out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had friends that have gone to those kind of books and they literally say, like, I'm getting in trouble from taking a bet. Someone at 5s and there's 8s out there, and, things like that. So it's definitely a difficult task. The lawmakers are not making it any easier. They see New York up there, and dumbasses, FanDuel and DraftKings and that go and, agree to this thing. And now they're copping it up the arse a bit in Illinois and these different things. Like, I don't know if there's any way to roll that stuff back, because, lawmakers seeing that revenue coming in when not realizing that there's a lot that they're losing because of that. Tennessee was on my radar, great tax rate, everything. And then they go and add this volume thing. And now sportsbooks there are offering, minus 115 on both sides. Like, that's just a black gray market looking to happen in that space. So it's, they've all been led down the garden path. They did these things where, they were letting the operators use the bonuses to put against the taxes. So now you have corporate structures that are building their database on the back of the tax money. So they've done a lot of things wrong. But the thing they did right is they legalized it. Is
it just going to be time? What's the catalyst for some of these states to get it right? Is it just? Is it just going to be 10 years down the road when they look, say, we have a population of 10 million, they have a population of 10 million. We're charging double the tax rate. They're taking in 3 times the revenue. Like,
so I think
it's going to be like they're going to have to see the real numbers eventually down the road and realize.
I hope so, but it's sort of been, fantasy sports was the Trojan horse to sports betting. Sports betting is the Trojan horse to iGaming. Sure. The responsible gaming thing right now, sports betting's getting hit on the head because that's what's there, but it's the iGaming that really is, burning people out and, things like that. You hear all the horror stories, And it's not someone betting $1,000 on a sports game. It's someone that's lost 20,000 at a slot machine. So I think if they can, separate those two things and let sports be what it is, tax it at a reasonable rate, it's a skill sport versus the iGaming and the lotto where they can go gouge the taxes on those things, then I think they'll find a balance. But right now they're just lumping everything into one and just saying it's this tax for everything. And you're starting to see the slowdown of the states. Like I think there's 7 legal now with iGaming when there was probably expected to be 15 to 20 by the end of this year. But I think a lot of them are just getting that pushback, and sports betting's the one getting sort of whacked around because it's seen as the bad guy versus ultimately what is the casino and the iGaming and things like that. So I don't know. As I said, can a New York or someone like that roll it back? Can an Illinois roll it back? I don't know how easy it is to go backwards once you've gone forwards. And that's kind of the delay. Even New Jersey would, there was a unsponsored bill or something that was looking to take it to 35. Well, I think they have sports betting, kind of right in the wheelhouse where it should be. So go tackle iGaming and ramp that one up if you want to really gouge something, because sports betting's just the smallest, household percentage earner for a company.
Of course, that's well said. I guess I personally don't think it was a bad bet to try to get bring the offshore experience onshore. As a player now for 10 plus years, pretty aggressively, there's nothing more tilting than not being able to get a bet down at the size you want on the event you want, and then the result happens, and it's absolutely tilting, and giving people that
team always wins by 100.
Yeah, we're tip of the spear. We're 10 years ahead of the people who started doing this a couple years ago. And as they get into their 30s and 40s and have more disposable income or just get a passion for it, like those people are going to need a place to play. And so I think it was ultimately a good bet. But do you see risk of a company like FanDuel getting better at this? Do you see a risk of sports? The sport trades of the world, the exchanges, do people just figure out, oh, well, actually I have everything I want here? Like, I guess like what are the big risk factors if this ultimately was a good bet and those customers show up and they want to get down, they want to turn over $1 million in a month. All right. But they don't have a place to do it. Like, are those real risk factors?
100%. I mean, if one of those places would offer me enough money and give me the keys to the bus, I mean, I'll go drive it where it needs to go. Just acquire Prime or roll it in and set off. But yeah, and I think FanDuel is one that is getting better at it. From what I'm hearing, they do take bigger limits on the right stuff. I've been sitting in groups of people, and there's people that, if they're really limiting, like you hear, and on a Betway, and that will, limit down, and whereas FanDuel seems to be holding a little bit. DraftKings is another that, I think they're just not getting out of their own way. But you put the right people in that with the liquidity they have, you can't lose. Like that's where, it's sort of hard for them because they're in a business that they don't really understand, and they know the iGaming stuff is ultimately their goal. Well, that's great. Give me your sports betting and just let me play around with it. Give me a 2-year window, because this isn't something that can be done in a week or a month because results can fall bad. But it's like, just give it a runway, do it differently, and you have the liquidity to really, take control of that. ESPN bet seems to have seen it sort of, they peaked when they threw all this bonus money out, and then it just, dropped like a rock. But they have the tools that you should be able to do something with it and sort of get it out there with the right team behind it and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of those factors, and it's a small bankroll. You need things to go sort of right, or at least, the goal right now is break square. If we break square on month over month against the best gamblers in America, and within those states, this thing will fly. So again, it's really just like keeping expenses low, not doing crazy marketing, letting the arbors do a little bit of work, have decent limits, but don't push your chest out too far. Sort of curate those players bit by bit, find a few niche things, stuff like that, and just build it very slowly and purposefully. Because for me, I imagine I'll still be doing this in 10, 15 years. So I'm not looking to go anywhere or bail out or sell or anything like that. So,
sure.
Then it's sort of to see who else comes into it. Amazon are starting to buy up a lot of these streaming rights and things like that. Do they decide to slap a sportsbook in there for their customers and, they have all the hosting and all these kind of things?
Oh, there's pretty good synergy.
So yeah, there's behemoths out there.
Right in the app. You're right.
Yeah.
The game.
Yeah. They don't even need to come up with the brand.
We already have the Amazon comment.
They already got it. Wait, so 2-year demarcation, World Cup in the US. Like, is that kind of your benchmark for performance?
So that's step one. It's like literally get to August 2026 and then go, okay, where are we at? What are we doing? Okay. And from that, ultimately then, just, seeing where we're at.
And then it's soccer. You should just get rich. Again,
well, that's the thing. Well, that begs the question. Talk to us about the product for Euro and Copa America. Is it what you want it to be? Is it kind of meeting the demand of the bettors, and just in general, what's it like booking Euro and as an American or for the Americans?
I mean, it's again the numbers haven't been as good as what I would have hoped for, but it's it's sort of waiting to see what the states release. So at the end of the month, because we're obviously in a big dip where people may just not be betting, it's just soccer's not their thing. Finding little niches of where the players are. Maybe it's this few states who aren't big soccer players and stuff like that. So it's really sort of waiting for some of those states that release by sport, the way they structure their numbers, to see if we see across the board an increase in soccer or whether it just wasn't there. Product wise, again, it's up, decent limits, taking bets. And soccer is something that obviously we've worked on for a long time. We know it well, again, with BetChris in Latin America. So it's definitely a sport that we don't have fear in many things, but soccer is one thing that we're very aggressive at and pushing forward into. And it's just sort of seeing, when you get through this again, is it just that soccer didn't hit a peak and get the number and the rise in these states that we expected? And sort of just going from there to see, okay, what's next? But this was as much sort of just, again, making sure everything's in place, making sure everything's sort of getting fluid going into the football season.
The user acquisition stuff too, because that is just, it seems like everybody I've talked to who's done anything at any of the legal books, or just even without talking to them, it's pretty apparent what the bonuses are for. It's apparent what the advertising is for. Like that's the key. And you talked about like what your maybe not ideal, but what your probable user is. They're probably a little older. It's probably not an 18-year-old kid betting his first $50 on a game. But something I've thought about a lot over the last 4 or 5 years is, and again, it was an initial fear of mine because I live in Minnesota. Drew lives in California. I will bet at the legal books if I travel or if I drive to freaking Iowa. But for the most part, we're offshore bettors. And used to be a little more crypto. That's still how we move it around, but it's offshores for us. And that was my huge fear. Was like, if I'm running DraftKings and I have apparently $1 trillion to advertise with, I'm hiring some lobbyists and I'm getting like bet online, you're gone. Like Bodog, see ya. And there has been a little of that. Michigan did something with Bovada, but I think there are some stipulations in New York now, but that just hasn't happened for nearly at the level I thought it would. And I'm curious on your opinion on that now. And has it changed? Because I feel like 10 years ago, Adam wouldn't have been a fan of that. But is that something you think might happen? Do you think that's something that would benefit? It seems like that's your user base.
There's nothing they can do. They've failed at this for 20 plus years. Like that's why I say.
I know, but they did it with poker though. They were able. The only argument to that was they were able to do it with poker.
Yeah, I mean, poker, again, you need the players, you need the cross-state thing, which, again, the way the US is structured, it's a lot more difficult to have that cross-border things where you really need for liquidity. Betfair coming with the exchange on the horse racing into New Jersey, but again, couldn't get the liquidity because it's just New Jersey. We see the sport trade numbers every month. We've seen profit pull out and look to go in a different direction. They've just failed at it. I mean, when I first moved over this side of the world, and I think the Iraqi war was going on, and I was sort of in the office saying, why don't they just legalize sports betting and tax it? And this is like 2001, 2, 3 or something like that. And then I'd sort of, good friends with Roxy, which we'd have these conversations. And I, funny enough, even went across an email that was like 2011. And I'm sort of telling him, like, I'm trying to build up. I want to go do something in the US. It was when William Hill was looking around in New Jersey and Leroy's and that. And he said, it won't happen in our lifetime. And then it's sort of like, this is sort of the thing. And now, again, there's nothing they can do. And as you just said, like crypto, all these things, it's so easy to move things around where you need to. And there's someone somewhere in the world that's willing to take the action. And more people are doing that. That's why conversations now with regulators is allow crypto. Like, start taking away the things that are giving the unregulated an advantage. Like, start offering those. I know, Australia just shut down credit cards. You can't use credit cards for gaming, and a few other countries. Australia, the UK, and all, they've gone way over the top. All these regulators and lawmakers around the world are just building the gray market. Like, they're doing everything that they can to make it harder and harder for regulated books. So until they sort of change their mindset a little bit and sort of being, not being nanny states and overbearing and stuff like that, they're kind of just making it easier to not take these more difficult routes and go find an island or put your servers wherever they need to be where they can't be touched, or find the loopholes within the social casinos and the sweepstakes and all those kind of things. So again, until they've tried it, they've failed. You hear the AGA coming out every few months saying, we're going to do it. Like, take a break.
I'm saying. It's feckless. It's toothless. They have these statements, and that's the last you hear about it. And then a few months later, you have a similar thing. And yeah, the crypto thing doesn't make a lot of sense to me because it is just so easy. It's just, I'm not like super hardcore crypto, maxi bro, but I believe in it and it works. Right. And it's so easy. Like, anyone who's bet knows, like, you can have your bankroll split between 3 books, bet pretty evenly, shop around. One of those books is going to drop like a rock sometimes. And you need to move it around. It's just, that was such a blessing from the sky. It's like, oh, I can take winnings from one book and move it to another in like 40 minutes. Like, right. And it's just gotten faster and faster. I don't understand what the holdup with that would be, because the level of know your customer they have now, you would think they have everything they need to know. And yes, it's not going through a bank anymore, but they can say, this guy with this social security number took out this amount of money. Like, we still have the same information.
The thing about crypto, when you actually learn about it, it's the most sort of transparent secret thing there is. Like, you send money from exchanges to banks and that these days, and the exchanges are checking like 6 wallets over to see what it touched, what it's been split into, and all these kind of things. Like, it's way more traceable than cash and wires and all these kind of things. It's sort of the insane thing, but they don't understand that. They're not educated on that. And while they're trying to learn, these are just government workers. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they're not built to really understand and be educated in these certain things. They're educated in, red tape, bureaucracy, pushing papers around and trying to get the tax revenue.
Doing favors.
Sure. Okay. So I got to come back to live trading a little bit, because I'm curious if they're, like, to what degree, the relationship between running a book going up to the start of the match compared to matches in play, and how you kind of handle the different, it's just really the different incentives. Like, you're trying to do one thing, before the match starts, and then you entirely change once it starts, right? And I think in general, like, I'm curious, is every sport different in terms of the proportionality there?
Yes.
And like, does the proportionality drive sort of your attention in terms of what problems you're trying to solve? And okay, and then just in general, you know, are you seeing U.S. customers, are they at the stage where they are as interested in a live bet as they are in a pre-match bet? Yes. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So to give you some deeper background, like international basketball per se on a global scale is now like 95% live. So it's, you know, where you just put up the pre-game numbers and you almost get to the point where sometimes you offer game live, not pre-game, because it's just significant. Tennis, again, is 85-90% live, if not more. And again, you've got all your best traders on the live and things that pre-game you copy paste, just doesn't matter, sort of thing. On the flip side, you know, an NFL was really always 80-90% pre-game. A few years ago, it was sort of got down to sort of 60-65, and now you can probably get it to 50-50, where it's, you know, sort of in that side where it can, you know, back and forth over the course of a week or a season and whatnot. And it's moving that way heavily. One, you know, there's people that are just like tuning in halfway through a game, and with all this micro betting and all these different things, they can sit there for a quarter and play some action and then get back to whatever they need to do or whatever they're, you know, distracted from elsewhere. So you're seeing a lot of these sort of come and go players where they're just coming for a little bit, watching something and then going off. We've sort of seen that when we're offering streaming for BetChris in LATAM with the tennis. They'd tune in for a set and then they'd be gone again. And we're seeing more and more on the US sports as that's gravitating. And again, you can break it down by age brackets and all these different things. You know, parlays now, you're seeing stuff where, you know, you can bet the parlays live. The same game parlay stuff has gotten sort of fairly frictionless, where you can just keep tapping buttons, put on your bet, and then obviously it can turn into a cash out position and things like that. So there's the trading aspect, you know, the Robin Hood and those kind of things that people have gotten into, where they're wanting to trade in, trade out aspect of it. You know, will just cut their losses and go about their business, sort of thing. So it's definitely transitioning. You know, obviously for US books in general, live didn't really come around until probably maybe 9-10 years ago to some extent, even the unregulated books, whereas Australia, Bet3, I mean, I remember Bet365 sort of being 70-80% live business, you know, 15 years ago. And they've sort of, you know, gravitated up and down from that, depending on what jurisdictions and markets and that they're in. But it's definitely all heading that way. The product, you know, if they can ever get the streaming and the picture with the data, you know, which will be the ultimate product. I don't know if they can ever get there. But at some point, when that gets closer, you'll really see a boost in that live. Because right now, when you're looking at a sports book, or, you know, when I'm trading in that, I know what's happening before people are seeing it on TV. And that can range from 5 seconds to 2 minutes. So, you know, people are sort of, you know, one of the big arguments we have is, you know, this official data and needing to have the data and whatnot. I think you could not put markets up when the ball's in the air and only put it up on TV breaks, timeouts, half times, 3/4 times, all those kind of things. And I don't think you'd lose much business, because people, again, if they're looking at the odds, they know what's happening before they see it on the TV. And I think that distracts them as well. And they don't want to know that or see that. They want to experience it. So there's more and more of that. So it's sort of where they end up getting it to ultimately get it to more live. But it's definitely moving in that direction.
Close the sports book on match point. You don't want the surprise.
No doubt.
You don't want the surprise.
You know what's funny?
You do want the surprise. It's funny too that maybe my first time ever in Las Vegas, many years ago, there was some, I mean, it was, for lack of a nicer, it was a bum. I mean, he was dressed pretty shoddily, but he wanted to like bet me if the guy was going to make his free throw or not, like as it was happening, because we were in, and I didn't understand yet, because we were in like I think it was a Will Hill place, and he was the live odds, and I mean there was just such a gap between the TV and the stuff because he could just see it if the total moved up or if the spread moved up or not. And I didn't bet with him because I'm like, I don't know you. I'm not doing this. Like if I'm going to bet at the window, I didn't really even understand. It made me think of that. But that you joked about like Amazon, opening a book. Is that something you guys have looked into the other way? Is some of this low latency streaming? You think about like what is everybody's favorite part about 365, especially our friends at Bet Tennis, is the streaming tech that they have, the golf tech through the IMG stuff that people have. Like, is that something that I just don't know what that costs? Like, if you price that stuff out, is it something you're looking at down the road? Is maybe this is how we acquire volume. This is how we acquire a bunch of liquidity. Is people are going to come here to live bet because we have that.
Right, and that is there is a product out there. I think it's called Phoenix that is they've done it in horse racing, where they're getting the horse racing closer to the odds. The IMG product is a great product. They wanted 50% rev share a few years ago when we started the negotiations. I think we've gotten it down to a number where it's maybe a considerable choice, but it's. It's the cost of things. What do they bring? Right now, Sunday afternoon of the majors, I'm just sitting there punching in numbers. But again, I'm seeing the things happen before they happen on the TVs because I've got certain data aspects and other odds markets that I know are moving a lot quicker than, what the vision is. And even going and, knowing where that IMG product is and then just somewhat replicating it with a bit of latency and next holes and those kind of things. But it's what's the cost of the streaming, for example? When we looked at it, the conversation is if you're paying $100,000 for the current streaming, which is a 5 or 6 second delay, it's probably $300,000 or $400,000 to get it with no latency. We have some trader views that we see now that our traders with the trader vision can almost beat the data in some aspects of it as well. So it does exist. And for the traders behind the scenes and whatnot, these providers do have near zero latency product. But then for them to be able to put that onto the streaming, then, is an Amazon, is an Apple TV, is an NBC, a CBS, all these kind of ones going to kick a fit up because now no one's watching their TV. They're all at the sportsbooks watching the streaming online. So there's always some kind of contractual obligations where they have to add delays and things like that. So, for the entire world, and that's why I say if it comes where, someone has the TV rights and they have a betting product, ultimately then putting it together, and that's why someone like an ESPN or something like that, they should have advantages somewhere, somehow. I don't know if they just don't know how to put it together or whether they've never thought of it or whether they've not looked at it. But somewhere, somehow, these different groups are going to have products that outperform others, which, again, it's just another cost of customer acquisition. And if you can sell that rather than going and just spending blindly on CPAs and things like that, it's product. And we're trying to differentiate ourselves in product by letting everybody come in the front door. No need to bid or come in the back. Decent limits, I mean, I could even speak for you guys. Ultimately, you don't need to bet much to be happy because at least you're getting a bet on and you know what the limit is before you click the button. It's when they fuck you and try and, spin the wheel or go to give you $5 when you're asked for 500. That's, generally the biggest issue. I've lived it for 30 years. I laugh at the Twitter and all those things when they're saying, oh, I got limited to this. I was limited in the 90s. Like, it's just like, it's
plus there's a massive disconnect right now because the people who are bitching are player prop, their odds jams. They're I didn't get the stake I wanted betting all these ETR releases on player prop. Surprise.
You had nothing but player. You did no cover player.
Okay.
Or the guy that was just repeatedly pass posting halftime. It's like that. He's just
I got limited. Oh, weird.
So mad. Like Benson cut me off. Like buddy,
you're like it's trying to break your kneecaps.
Yeah,
man.
in the 80s, you might have had some issues with your legs.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like player props, I'm going to come out like. We'll have low limits, 250, 500, whatever it is. We don't really care about them. It's just, again, window dressing, product to put up.
Sure.
And
it's
owning what we are. And
If you have an originating player who's originating baseball, for instance, and then they happen to come across something that is a true like monster edge on the strikeout prop, right? Like, $250 bonus for you. Like, have at it. You're gonna put that right back into the baseball market. Go right ahead. Like that. I get it. Like that makes total sense. And then just one kind of quick comment on the live thing. It was a funny experience. I was trading a decent amount of French Open, and the fastest feed, faster than anything on earth that I know, was Radio Roland Garros, because they have people who put the headphones on and are sitting there watching, and so it has to be lightning synced to what is happening, because the people in the crowd are listening to the commentary. And it was awesome, because you're like every live feed, you're like, they're saying what's happening before the ump presses the button that then creates the data that lets everyone know what happened. So you're like, oh my God, I'm ahead. There's nothing you can't do anything. You can't do anything about it. But it also is exactly what you said though, where it's like, you're like, you're not trying to beat the point being built into the line. You were literally just like waiting for opportunities where you're like, okay, the outcome of this game means a massive amount to the spread, the total, the money line. Right. Yep. And so you're literally just looking for the huge volatility spots in the match, not like really trying to get in, super tight margin.
Third point, second game.
Time wise, you're literally just waiting for the high volatility moments. And then you got to the actual death, and you were literally like, I'm gonna wait my 30 seconds or whatever. The delay on the streaming for tennis was horrific on the video. But you're like, I know this one's gonna matter, and I gotta watch what happens, because I need to see the player's body language after he wins or loses this point, right? Like this is gonna tell you something about his headspace as he goes into the next service game if he loses, or vice versa, right? And it's that fact that it's not like you're not sitting there in person watching it and being able to do all this was tough. It's not as enjoyable experience.
Yeah, and the Cricket World Cup was a bit like that, because if you listen to BBC radio and then you watch the Vision, the BBC was before it as well, and then you could sort of see the way that the markets, when they were delayed and things like that. And there's little nuances, but again, it's where are you looking for? Someone hits a 6, or there's a break point in the tennis, and you sort of hit that spot. And that's, there's certain times to do it, and certain times where it's just you sit and watch and whatnot. But, going back to that, the individual sports, and tennis in particular, it's the eyeball to me still beats the data. So it's a sense of what you just said. You sit back, you want to watch the reaction of that player and knowing what they're like, and whether that takes, gives them a hit for a day or so.
You need to know if it was a close call double fault, or if it was Yelena Ostapenko hitting it outside of.
God, I watched that 100 times today, Drew. I don't think I can.
Oh
do
my
that.
God, it was
I'd
so
have
bad.
To try.
It was so bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you haven't seen that clip, then you don't follow enough tennis accounts, because it was everywhere.
It's not. Yeah, anyone who watches that who doesn't follow tennis, this isn't like.
Yeah.
She's just some shitty player who's in a.
Right.
She's a slam winner, man.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. No, but tennis is huge too, because you'll definitely see data come across medical timeout for a player. Okay?
Right.
Like, is it like they need a Band-Aid because they threw their racket and hit him on the knee? Or is this like something serious happened, right? And if you don't have eyes on it, and or like there are some players like Djokovic who it's like, oh yeah, he's in medical distress when he's losing points, and then he feels great when he's winning points. And, you can kind of pick that up from seeing it live, as opposed to, just following a data feed. So yeah, completely, like eye test in tennis matters a ton.
The injury
compared
stuff
to some other sports
too, if you're paying attention, because otherwise flash score, just flash scores just like injury timeout,
Mm-hmm.
or on the live feeds you just go gray. And if you're
Yep.
watching,
did you have eye test opinion of McIlroy's meltdown?
Those are just hard putts.
Yeah, it was.
I know they are, but like the first miss was a little like,
That one wasn't as hard as his last.
It wasn't as hard.
Yeah.
It was like, well, if that one didn't go, like, what if he comes up with a harder one that matters more?
We should bring this up every podcast throughout the fall. I enjoyed it so thoroughly.
Yeah, for that, I was doing a live stream on Twitch, and I've gone back and watched it, and we had not just Prime, Bet Chris, and collectively, and then my betting and a few other things.
Yeah,
it was about a 1.8 swing. Collectively that I'd put the company, myself, others into a position going into Sunday. And when he, got ahead and did what he was doing, like the reactions were what they should have been, was out of my chair. And then just the deathly silence after the putt. Well, it was probably more after DeChambeau shot out of the bunker, because even before then, you miss a putt. Okay, there's still hope. DeChambeau's over in the grass and he goes into the bunker, and you're thinking, all right, beautiful playoff. Start setting it up, getting ready to price it. But it wasn't even the first putt. I think it was the second bogey that Rory had, and I just sinking feeling, like the live betting, I was, you could arbitrage me to death on Rory against Betfair and a few other places, because I just had a sick feeling that this was at least going to a playoff, and sure enough, and it was still a horrible result. And then we, of course, saw Rufus's post during the week or whatnot of what he'd done, and where, like, there was a few people that I knew had done a certain few things, and there was probably half a dozen of us in a position of, just not wanting DeChambeau that day. And then this glimmer of hope, and then Rory. I mean, I've been on Rory before, and been disappointed by him many times. So yeah, it was a sick feeling.
That Rufus post too, immediately when I read that, I feel like I got to it early. Like I saw it when it was still fresh, before it had been quote tweeted to death. And I just remembered, but like, people aren't going to be reasonable about this. Like there's not going to be reasonable, because I don't want to put myself in the same shoes as Rufus, because the volume he does in golf, but just knowing, like, trying to whittle your way out of a position on a Sunday in golf, it's so hard. Like there's no right answers, because you can model it to death, and it's still golf in the end, and a lot of things can happen on a Sunday, and it's I don't know what they actually ended up with, trying to do there, if that was the right way to do it, but that's I remember one of my first trying to hedge a golf bet one time, where it was like I had the top two runners going into Sunday, and there were three guys like 3 or 4 shots back. So I just said, well, I'm going to bet all those guys too, and I'm going to be fine. And then Spieth comes from like 7th and shoots like a 61. Hey, he doesn't win. I still ended up okay, but I'm just remembering, like, oh, this is bad. Like, this is horrible. Like, I'm gonna lose like all my bets because of this motherfucker. Like, what are we doing?
The golden rule with the gambling gods is, if you hedge, your original thing wins. If you don't hedge, your original thing loses. It's just part of the game. I mean, Betfair was the greatest creation for future bettors, and literally that was what I did for the bulk of my career, was bet futures and things like that. So being able to just hedge or lay off or get out kind of thing, that was huge. And that's where on the bookmaking side, knowing what players have as open bets and being able to let them hedge against those without putting funds up and stuff like that in other jurisdictions, something that, I've never sat with a regulator in the US and seeing what can be done and can't be done and things like that. But those are kind of, again, niche pieces that, come bet futures with us, bet the golf win or whatnot. And, I mean, obviously they have cash out and things these days, but, being able to just let people use that liquidity or that position they have to do something on the other side or bet the no and things like that. So,
do you think
yeah,
It feels like
Mhm.
regulators they just struggle with stuff like that because
Yeah, of course they
it's
do
like
that.
it's
they're like, we're not getting
theoretical.
as many taxes as we think out of this?
Well, and it's
Yeah,
silly
we should be
because
getting more somehow.
like I feel like there's a pretty good analog in the stock market to this sort of thing,
sure.
guys. Like,
Sure.
Right.
we've been doing this for a long time on Wall Street.
So the futures kind of generally, that's interesting that I think I'd heard you talk about how your background came from, kind of taking advantage of some of that. It still feels like if you were advanced past, originating player props and you wanted to do something else, but not really ready to take on like, midweek NFL or something like that. It does still feel like there is enough liquidity in futures to make it interesting and a general sort of softness still, in that sometimes things will move game wise, things will happen live. And there are ways to kind of get a decent bet down in futures markets still, as like that's the last thing to get corrected. Does that ring true to you still, or do you think that in general that there's a good kind of cleanup crew that comes through and gets all those cleaned up too?
There's still a lot there, and again, you don't need to bet much to really make a score. You can chip away. And Betfred was an example. They just would never take a bet, but there was a course of where I'd bet 15, 20, $50 kind of thing on 50 to 1 shots. And you just do that over the course because they generally don't change, baseball and stuff like that. They don't change for a week. So you could just chip away. And if you're doing that at 5 or 6 books like that, suddenly you're getting maybe 400 or 500 a day on decent. And those were things where I had no bankroll management. Whenever I get into those conversations, zero. Whatever was in my bank account, my betting accounts, under my mattress, whatever else, plus all the credit I had available to me, it was all in play literally every week. And that was sort of my bankroll management. And then just sweat through the weekend and see what happened Monday. And then, I'm betting as much on an even money shot as I am on a 20 to 1 shot, because I'm swinging for the fences on the stuff that I really want to, score on. But yeah, those kind of things, you can chip away, you can find weaknesses. People aren't updating that stuff every day. You can see, significant injuries where they don't push the odds on some, so you can sort of find little spots that it'll, whether it's divisions or looking at
there's not an odds screen. You have to old fashioned price shop.
Right.
Or
which is,
I'm
very much, the odds screen things. I like forcing people to do the work.
Of course.
It's just part of the game for me. And then if there is an on screen, just trying to manipulate the shit out of it so people, chase your line or do for different things and screw themselves up as well.
Those futures, they're still futures. They're just futures on the other end of the spectrum. But the whale tracker, we talked about that with Trench a little. The sport trade whale tracker, the guys that are really hammering those, 1 to 50. It feels weird saying it backwards like that. You say 50 to 1, I know what you mean. Like you're laying 50 to make one, on the nose for some of these guys. And you wonder about that with some of these, some of it's probably arbitrage, some of it's modeling, some of it's opinion. But I always wondered about that with golf, because not only that, we got a guy on my team that's up at Detroit because he lives there, and he knows some caddies, he knows some players, and he's out talking to a bunch of people, and he's giving us a little info here and there about just some guys like, hey, I talked to this guy, I talked to this caddy. Here's some guys that are they're not going into DFS lineups, they're not going in the matchups at all this week. Right. And you wonder about that. If you really had some inside information on like golf, you could get so aggressive on like those no's, because there's just there's no woes, there's no underdog, NFL injuries, there's no the fantasy life alerts for NFL. You don't have any of that for golf. Like you're just in the freaking dark on those injuries. You find out like Monday, oh yeah, his back's fucked, he might not play.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that when they don't understand, and it goes back to the Rufus bet, was, you don't know how many others that he laid the no on. And then you can lay 40 at 50s, and, you're not on that bad of a position.
Yeah. Only one's going to win.
Generally people that are betting no's aren't betting one. They're betting, maybe 15 or 20 of them. So they're sort of building up a position. So it's, there's a lot that you see out in the market, and you see the markets and even odd line moves and that. You have no idea what's happening behind the scenes or all the other things that they're doing. And, it's sort of the curiosity over judgment of everybody's quick to just, well, what a bad thing to do. Why would you do that? That's insane, stuff like that. But, probably did it on the last tournament and escaped. So it's
how many guys win? Yeah, how many guys win the golf tournament every week?
Well, that's
usually,
it. Yeah,
usually just the one. Let's here in Louisiana.
Hey, I gotta ask you. Circa definitely seems to have utilized their contests as a marketing tool.
Yep.
Is Nevada the only place that could run NFL contests?
Well, those conversations are being had of different things like that. Again, but I mean, Circa have done a great job. Their sports book and everything else that they do, great job. But they do still have a bunch of slot machines.
Their app is really,
money.
Their app is really some.
Yeah. Well, the app is horrible. The app is from the 90s. I mean, it's straightforward. They've done a good job on that, but they still do have a casino that obviously makes money and support a lot of this stuff. So yeah, you sort of, if you really want to see Circa and how they're doing, you dig into those other states and the volumes that they're doing and sort of where they fit in the where they sort of fit in those markets as well. And that's, again, kind of just, it's Ohio, we're sort of mid-ranked volume-wise. The results haven't been great. New Jersey, they don't really release them in a certain way. So, but now that Tipico's leaving, we're kind of the only Oceans partner, so we'll stand out there as well. But, yeah, I mean, while I say there's, no competitors, do look where we're doing in volumes and stuff like that. But I get the numbers every morning. Before I even open them, I can see whether it's red or green at the top of it. And then I've got, sometimes it's one red state, one green state. And that's all it is right now, is just day to day and making sure we don't sink the ship with what they're doing. But looking at everything, looking at doing a spank odds or an unabated line feed. We've just had sort of some technical reasons why we haven't pushed it. Zero attempts to try and help Don Best and putting anything in.
Speaking of red states, are you going to offer markets?
So glad you brought this up. This was saving it for the end.
Are you? Yeah, no. This is my coup de grace too. Do you have the ability, the legality, are you allowed to political betting?
From what I understand,
there's a lot of volume around that around the world.
Oh, I've seen the volume of American elections over the course of the last 20 plus years. I don't believe there's any states that have legal election betting, and I could be completely wrong. And if we can do it in New Jersey or Ohio or Kentucky or possibly Arizona before the election runs, I'll be putting it up, and we'll be going to town on it and doing whatever the regulators allow us to do within the rules that they put in place. But as far as I know, there is no states with it approved.
Okay, so can I ask you then opinion about worldwide liquidity? It has always seemed pretty obvious to me that there are certain companies that stand to benefit to the tune of 9-10 figures if a certain party is in charge. And they are now allowed to donate as much money as they want through whatever channels they want to the getting that party elected. Is the liquidity in any way coming from them hedging on the money that they're spending? Like, because if I'm getting $100 million, if
it's not the first time we've asked somebody this question.
No, if I'm getting $100 million government contract, if Party X wins, I'm giving them $10 million to run the campaign, and I'm betting $10 million against them. Like at a freaking price the same day.
Right. One, I think you'd struggle to get certain limits down, but you could over a period of time through enough places if you had enough channels to sort of do that. I I don't think there's anyone really taking the time and effort to go out there and bet into the bettor market.
That has no part in the worldwide liquidity numbers that we see on this. This is just human interest.
I believe, yes. You know, if there is this, it's very tiny, but it's human interest. I mean, you know, I've seen other markets, other countries, Brexit, you know, those kind of things that do decent liquidity. There's nothing like a US election, and there's nothing like a Donald Trump US election. Sure. It's just, you know, for the rest of the world, we just sit back and, you know, the whole point for 2016 was we just wanted another 4 years of that. Like, we just wanted to watch the nightly shows, watch Americans just trip over themselves and be the sort of laughing center. But having said that, I mean, Trump versus Biden's 4 years, you know, he kind of kept the peace a little bit. I don't really know what it means economically to a person in the US, you know, the taxes and all that, because I've never had to, you know, there's no gaming taxes in Jamaica or Australia or anything like that. So, you know, I feel sorry for the Americans that are doing sports betting and actually have to pay on their winnings. But yeah, it's just, it's the swings as well. Like, it's, you know, the swing, the damage that Trump did in 2016 winning was phenomenal for the books. It wasn't a good result. And then obviously it was a bit better result, although a lot of them didn't go as aggressively in 2020. And then this year again, it's
There's so many live markets, so much more live in 2020 compared to 16. And then even I remember betting a bunch of times on the Georgia runoffs.
Sure.
Remember those Senate markets where they had the run? Like, there was 3 or 4 books that had those up, and there was some wild movement in those. Like, that was months after the elections.
Yeah,
and
there was
a lot. I wonder. That's where I'm wondering, like, this year, what it's going to look like. It's really taken some big steps up as far as what they offer.
Yeah, I mean, this year it's been, you know, gets found guilty. What do we do with the market? I think he stays favorite. You know, and then you see Biden get up and having a speech and walking away, and it's like, is he going to last till November? Like,
felony's like 20 cents.
Is that and is that good or is that bad? Yeah,
it's the markets have been wild. A lot of places usually put them up like after the last election. I think the last election sort of scared a lot of books in, like, just
because of the time the time and the rules.
Well, just the mess that it was, and the way that, you know, when do you pay out? People want to get paid out the day after the election. Well, you know, it's really based on the inauguration that the result is meant to be done. So, and then everyone has different rules if you look into it. So people arbitraging in that one gets paid out or lose their money in November, and then they're worried they could lose it the other side in January. It's a complete mess, and it's kind of that's where the regulators and the legislators as well, if they're going to approve it and put it in their catalog, there has to be real stringent, strict rules of, you know, how do you pay out on this? And then from what I understand, the regulators are generally, you know, maybe on one side or the other of the aisle of, you know, based on who gives them their job and things like that. So, you know, it's an interesting time, and it's, you know, it's really going to be a fun November.
I had forgotten about that because there was people saying, like, am I getting my bet refunded if we overturn this? Like, I think that might be the least of our concerns. If we're doing stuff like that, like, you might just not worry about your sports book and gear up for Civil War, boys. maybe don't worry what Bet Online's going to do with your election bets at that point. Yeah, that was something. I do. Hopefully they, maybe not. Hopefully, I guess, for our sakes, maybe they have a better grip on how the mail-in ballots work this year for the live markets. Because that swung pretty hard the wrong way for a while.
Yeah, and that kind of was my sort of underlying question, which is that a lot of it doesn't always seem rational, and it's like, well, no, why would it go that way when this is like what?
It's not so much the way you were premising it in the beginning, but there is a lot of bettors that don't bet with any logic when it comes to election betting.
Sure.
They think one side's right. They think one side's going to win, and they'll bet that one side, no matter what they really think the odds should be.
And their information diet might be telling them that getting them fired up on the way in. Because the way you get turnout up is you get your people fired up that you're going to win, and so they may be consuming an information diet that's completely
Generally, they are.
Biased.
People, what I've learned about the Americans in general in the culture is they're just deaf to one side and they listen to all the other sides. So they think everything's fives on. They think their side should be fives on, and it's like, take your pick. And they're like, well, this is a no-brainer. So it's kind of...
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think the other reason that question spurred is that there was a funny story a long time ago where there was a guy in a duffel bag with cash in Vegas, and he was bettor X, and he was showing up and he was betting a MLB playoff games, late in series, and he was winning, and so it made news that bettor X was showing up with a duffel bag of cash and placing winning bets, and people were really drawn in. And a friend of ours was like, "Oh yeah, that was us." And we were like, "Oh, why?" He's like, "Oh, well, we own a ticket company, and we have 5,000 tickets for Game 7 of the Cubs World Series, and if it doesn't happen, then we're going to lose, I don't know, $1 million. So we went and bet $1 million that it would happen, or that just to cover our ass in case this event doesn't happen." And you're like, "Oh, holy crap! Yeah, of course. There are a lot of people who stand to make money if a certain thing happens one way or the other, and if it doesn't, then it would make sense to bet the opposite to at least get you halfway there. Hedge it. Of course, this isn't you don't have an opinion. You just want to get your equity.
You want to sell all your tickets.
It's another hedging, and it's just back to the mattress Mac. I mean, we've seen how he can ruin a market for many and make a great market for others. I mean, when he bet on the Kentucky Derby a few years ago, he just elevated prices of all the other horses, and it was like, this is great. Come and bet this every year on something that I don't like, and I can bet all the other things. But yeah, I mean, the fact that you bring that up, and sure, it's more than plausible that it is actually happening somewhere out there, but from everything that I've seen, it's just general liquidity of people wanting to gamble on the election, and it's more opinions on this stuff than anything else that I've ever seen bet. Is an American election is just driven by, he's going to win. He's going to win. It's not, I think the odds are wrong. I think it's he's going to win, or she's going to win, going back to 2016. Which was...
It's funny how close it comes to sports, though. It's the same delusions that we all have. If we can just get the running game going in the second half, we're going to be fine. We're only down 10. We've done this before, and it's the same thing. If we can take Maricopa County, and it's the live reactions on Twitter. I'm looking forward to the election one way or the other, because Twitter is just so good for 2 straight days of just the tracking of everything.
Okay, I got a final question for you that I love asking every bookmaker. Obviously, there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there. None of them in our audience, obviously. Our audience is the learned, and everybody knows there's no scripts. But if you been sitting in a spot where if you could make a call and you could specifically direct an event in your bookmaking lifetime, what are you calling in?
Boy, I'm looking for something that's big fat odds. I'm just wanting to make one big score to just to nail it.
It's got to be a first touchdown scorer. Something like that. Something like that. It has to be. Oh man, there's not enough volume on.
And if you
can't get enough down.
Yeah, that's the tough thing these days. You really got to find something that you can get down on. Something that's at big odds, and something that's not going to show up.
Yeah.
Which probably comes back to a horse race. It's probably trying to find a big global horse race.
You want the rich strike.
Kentucky Derby or whatever it needs to be, or something like that. It's just, knowing what the result is, just going one last hell for leather, and then
Have you
Yeah.
ever hit the super in the Derby?
No.
Me neither. One of these days.
No,
I did it, Drew. Remember that?
hit the
The
exacta
chalky one?
long time ago.
You had the super chalk. You had the chalky
I
super.
had the really chalky one
Yeah.
from like 6-7 years ago where
Yeah.
it was like, I bet like $400 to win and I won like 520, not net
in
either.
the super.
It was just,
In the super.
yeah.
Not a try.
It was just like 4,000 10-cent bets, man. I fucked up the numbers and it popped out. I'm like, this is like, I didn't know you could just put it back and cancel.
Oh, you
it.
hit the super. You had all. Okay.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
No, it just came up. It came up with all the chalk. I did have who's the horse that they
Justify.
Yeah, they DQ'd. Remember that? I was standing in line with some winners that
maximum
time.
security.
Maximum security. Here's one, because as I saw it coming down the straight, and this was a close to a 7-figure swing for a book I was working for at the time. Saw it coming down, jumped out of my chair. I was like, there's no impediment. There's going to be something here. They went past the line, and that was the longest wait. The longest wait.
It was like a half
Hardly
hour.
wrote a bet.
It was a long time.
Was it Country Home? Country
House? Yeah.
Country
House.
And the story is, and I'm 300 plus pounds, that I leapt at least 5 foot off the floor when they announced it that he'd been DQ'd and won. That was, it's funny.
I will go to my grave if that course had connections that did not include service in particular as trainer. I don't think they DQ maximum security. I don't think that anyone was especially liked, and I think there was a little politics at play in terms of making that decision. But the wait this year was interminable. The wait this year was quite long as well. Like that was a pretty close call. I mean,
It was fun.
Churchill Downs was like a gasp. There was like nobody celebrated. Like usually it's just elation from the crowd because we know the winner. But it was like, what do we celebrate? Who won? It was like, oh, this is incredible. That was an incredibly close finish, and still not sure exactly how Mystic got there, but
that maximum security one, I was at the track, just the local track, Canterbury. And the lines were as long as a line can ever get because they weren't paying anything, and everyone had their tickets. So the lines were 3 times as long as they've ever seen them there, and they're not moving. And then they make the announcement, and you just see like 40-50% of the people just leave the lines. Like, oh man, sorry guys. Like I had some losers because of that, but I mean I stayed in line for something. Yeah, I remember I cashed some garbage, but boy, it was
the best is they cash in Medina's spirit, and they can't take it away from you. When I was going to say,
I think I had a show bet or something that ended up winning, but it was crazy just watching the exodus. Like, oh fuck, like you guys, that sucks for some of you.
On all those kind of things, there's winners and there's losers, and you're in this game long enough, and you just know the gambling gods are messing with someone somewhere, and you just accept it and move on to the next one. So
have you been to tracks all around the world, like general, just like seen like Hong Kong or Cheltenham?
Pretty much for 30 years I've sat behind a computer screen, and just every major sporting event in the world, that's where I've been, locked in a dark room, trading, booking, betting, all this kind of stuff. And about 2-3 years ago, a guy that I've known for 25 years or something said for my 50th I should go and do, because it's the World Cup year, and do all these things. And I just thought, fuck it. So I went to a Breeders' Cup. I've been down to 2 derbies in a row. I went to St Andrews for the British Open a couple of years ago. Sat courtside at the Sixers this year. Went and watched Penn U at some little rinky-dink gym in Philadelphia.
The Palestra?
The Palestra, yes. I was at the Palestra.
That gym is about as old as America, man.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading all the things on the wall and that. I mean, I'm just going to things, funny. Just throwing caution to the wind.
That's funny. Delmar called me today.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, are you going to see you at the Breeders' Cup this year?
that's the plan. I do want to go
back
there
to
this
Del
year.
Mar. Go back to old Del Mar.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that course. I'd heard good things about it, and I went there. What was it, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah.
So it was. I definitely like that track. I like that coastline. It's sort of like what I grew up on in Australia. So yeah, it's just getting out and doing these things. I've built up a great trading team that I don't need to be in the box anymore. I just need to go like to a Masters and a couple of other things, Super Bowl, and we'll start checking those things off. But I've lived and breathed this thing for a long time, and just decided I need to get out and amongst it. And horse racing is what I grew up on, and own horses. I actually just claimed something from Churchill Downs last week to send to Jamaica for a $250,000 race at the end of the year. So I'm living the life.
I love it.
There you go.
I love it. Fantastic. All right. Well, we'll wrap up here. Thank you for your time as always.
Appreciate it.
And by all means, if you haven't already and you live in Ohio or New Jersey, check out Prime. And if you have been using it and you are familiar with the offshore experience, I'd love to hear your feedback. So by all means, message me, message Adam, let us know. And hopefully this is the idea of having access to what we have offshore without the uncertainty would be pretty outstanding. So hopefully we get there in California in my lifetime. We'll see. But
it's it'll be a while for us. So appreciate the time. I forgot, Drew, you don't have the you have the controls. I have to hit the controls. So we'll see you guys next week. The 4th of July is it's a
Thursday.
It's a Thursday. I was going to say, if it's Wednesday, I might not be coherent and ready to do this. So we'll do normal time next week. We'll figure it out, guys.
See, Zach Edey went 9th to the group.
The NBA draft got real drunk.
Bizarre. Got real weird. Ron Holland.
Charlotte's pick.
Holland closed 50-1 to go 4th or 5th. Actually, sorry, plus 44.
We go in the top 500. The Timberwolves traded like a 2031 pick